You've been there. That suffocating density in the atmosphere, the instant, visceral awareness when the air goes tight, that sudden, sinking, stomach dropping feeling, realizing that someone occupying a position of immense institutional authority, a regional manager, an entrenched vice president, or even a low level gate agent in a power uniform, is fundamentally not operating within the strict confines of established policy. They are, instead, actively weaponizing deep seated personal prejudice, often cloaked in bureaucratic obfuscation. They believe, in that moment of casual dismissal, that your hard won professional dignity is somehow negotiable, a variable to be discarded. They proceed with the arrogant assumption that your demonstrated competence is entirely invisible, a fact they can simply erase through sheer, unearned power projection. But what if you possess the single precise verbal phrase, the exact verifiable policy number, or the entirely unexpected, highly leveraged relationship that could not only neutralize but stop the entire abusive scenario cold in its tracks? What if the quiet, calculated, almost imperceptible step you take within that tense moment results in the immediate dramatic reversal of a $500 million corporate deal, definitively proving that the pursuit of justice, authentic and lasting, does not require shouting, emotional outbursts, or futile moral appeals? This essential strategy is not predicated on seeking instant, superficial karma or engaging in messy, escalating violent confrontations. It is profoundly about leveraging a combination of factors: calm, centered courage, the meticulous precision of documentation, and a surprising, undeniable exhibition of superior competence, all focused on strategically forcing undeniable accountability upon those who misuse their power. I have borne witness to this transformative dynamic recurringly. The exact critical moment when an individual makes the strategic decision to pivot their energy from understandable, reactive indignation toward cold, precise, calculated action, the entire architecture of the room fundamentally shifts. The brass badge instantly loses its manufactured shine. The complex contract, moments from completion, is abruptly paused. We witness a tangible, vital transition, moving away from debilitating fear and toward a condition of more acute clarity, more enduring dignity, and ultimately more control. We now focus on Dr. Lena Hayes as she confidently walks into the towering corporate offices of a major regional bank. She is dressed impeccably, representing a preeminent global philanthropic foundation that is finalizing the complicated, highly sensitive, multi-million dollar land acquisition essential for the development of a desperately needed new community education center. Lena's qualifications far exceed simple legal representation. She is a renowned regulatory compliance expert, deeply and fluently conversant in the kind of complex financial language, deep statutory interpretation, and dense capital market regulations that frequently cause even the most seasoned financial VPs to experience intense anxiety and break into a sweat. She is directed to the executive suite, sitting across a vast, polished mahogany table from Mark, the bank's senior vice president of commercial lending. The initial perfunctory pleasantries dissolve with an uncomfortable speed, quicker than loose sugar melting in scalding hot coffee. Mark, whose reputation precedes him as a gatekeeper of old money and entrenched privilege, eyes her expensive, perfectly tailored suit with a palpable, dismissive scrutiny. He then glances rapidly down at the foundation's voluminous file, an expression of profound, dismissive skepticism deeply etched onto the lines of his face. "Dr. Hayes," Mark pronounces, slowly leaning back into the luxurious ergonomic chair, radiating an unearned performative sense of authority that attempts to dominate the space. Let's be unequivocally frank about the nature of this transaction. This represents a sizable, highly significant tranche of capital moving through our institution. We must exercise maximum prudence to ensure that the primary decision makers, the individuals with final fiscal authority, fully and completely understand all inherent risks involved. Are you present merely to shepherd the documents, ensuring they reach the correct recipients? Or is the actual principal counsel, the signatory authority, immediately available for consultation? That is the calculated sting. It is the immediate racially and gender-based assumption that she, a professional black woman, notably under the age of 40, could not possibly be the intellectual architect of the deal. She must, in his reductive framing, be nothing more than a highly educated messenger, an efficient assistant, but never the author. The meeting had been categorically scheduled for the final authorization signatures, marking the closing of a long process. Instead, Mark is inventing bureaucratic hurdles, demanding additional, utterly redundant collateral documentation. Documentation that Federal Regulation Z, the seminal Consumer Protection Statute, explicitly states is entirely waived for certified nonprofit foundations of this substantial size, financial stability, and established reputational standing. Lena feels the immediate familiar internal heat rise, the predictable surge of frustration, the powerful impulse to launch into a defensive recitation of her credentials, to defend the sheer intellectual weight of her resume and her institutional track record. This, she knows instantly, is the common, fundamental mistake professionals often make when confronted by systemic prejudice. We attempt to convince the aggressor on a shaky, subjective moral level. We argue ethics. But in the architecture of corporate power, policy, specific and undeniable, always beats subjective ego every single time. Lena consciously chooses stillness. She accesses the deepest reserves of her professional calm. She keeps her voice low, measured, impeccably steady, and utterly professional. She refuses to allow the issue to immediately escalate to the realm of racial discrimination. She immediately raises the objective issue of institutional competence and legal liability. Mark, she states, her gaze utterly steady, maintaining unbreakable eye contact. With all due professional respect, those specific documents you are requesting are not merely redundant, they are contractually and legally unnecessary. As per the detailed fiduciary oversight agreement, the document which, I might add, your own legal department thoroughly vetted and approved last financial quarter, the Foundation demonstrably holds an irrevocable, legally binding letter of credit. This financial instrument specifically supersedes all standard documentation requirements for this specialized asset class. Furthermore, requiring this documentation now not only introduces unnecessary delay, but actively violates Section 1026-37A, Yahans 1 of the Truth in Lending Act. That particular section was codified precisely to protect certified nonprofits and substantial institutional foundations from this precise level of unwarranted and discriminatory due diligence redundancy. Mark scoffs audibly, a sound of profound dismissiveness. He picks up his expensive, distracting phone, dismissively waving a manicured hand toward her. Look, Dr. Hayes, I genuinely appreciate your enthusiasm for statutory interpretation, but this department operates under my sole discretion. We require this documentation for internal risk assessment, regardless of federal guidance. If you cannot or refuse to provide it within the hour, we will immediately pull the authorization. This is simply standard internal policy. He genuinely believes he has cornered and trapped her within his subjective, racially biased, and now highly dangerous interpretation of standard policy. This is the exact critical moment to strategically activate witness mode. Lena smoothly reaches for her phone. It is already silently set to audio recording, in states permitting single-party consent, or simply making a note that a contemporaneous record of the proceedings is being created. Silence is not an absence of power. Silence is evidence waiting to be collected. Her immediate operational imperative is clear: record, report, document. I fully understand the position you have articulated, Mark. Lena continues, deliberately noting the exact time, date, and location clearly into the ongoing recording. However, to ensure full regulatory compliance on all sides of this transaction and to protect the fiduciary interests of the Foundation, I will require three specific deliverables from you before I conclude this meeting and depart. First, I require a signed formalized document stating that the bank is unilaterally pulling the authorization and that this decision is explicitly citing the non-delivery of waive collateral requirements under Regulation Z as the basis. Second, I require a physical copy of the specific internal policy that, in the bank's view, overrides established federal law in this specific matter. Third, I require the full official name and direct contact information of your immediate superior for an instant formalized appeal of this action. Three meticulously calm logical steps, deployed in rapid succession, designed to achieve one loud, unavoidable result: immediate accountability or immediate retraction. Mark freezes mid-gesture. His previously arrogant smile utterly cracks, revealing the underlying uncertainty. He knows the specific rule she cited is absolutely real and easily verifiable. He knows fundamentally that he cannot, under any circumstances, place that explicit violation of Regulation Z in official bank writing. Yet, the toxic inflation of his ego, fueled by his prejudice, prevents immediate surrender. He decides, catastrophically, to double down, convinced that this young woman is bluffing her leverage. I am the senior executive fully in charge of this decision, Dr. Hayes. If you do not like the established process, you are welcome to find another financial institution for this transaction. Now, if you are quite finished playing procedural policy games, I need to use this time productively. I need to call the actual financial authority, the principal, the one with the real responsibility on the Foundation's side to discuss the requirements for their primary account. He looks at her with patronizing, dismissive impatience. They must clearly have somebody handling the real financial decisions, correct? This is the final, ultimate dismissal, the total erasure of her professional authority. Lena allows only a small, subtle, exquisitely confident shift in her professional posture. She reaches into the interior pocket of her suit jacket and pulls out a highly specialized, distinctly engraved business card. Not her typical regulatory counsel card, but another, far more impactful designation. You are entirely correct, Mark, she agrees, her voice remaining perfectly steady. You absolutely, without question, need to call the actual financial authority. And I highly recommend you facilitate that call right this moment, directly from my phone, using the verified direct line I am about to provide. Mark pauses, irritation momentarily overriding his caution. And who, exactly, is that? Lena places the highly specialized card on the polished mahogany table, centering it precisely between them, creating an inescapable focus. The card identifies her not only as Dr. Lena Hayes, Regulatory Counsel, but also as the undisputed lead architect of the Consolidated Financial Ethics and Compliance Framework. The identical, massive internal compliance system the bank had reluctantly purchased 18 months prior at significant expense, solely to avoid catastrophic multi-billion-dollar federal fines after a series of institutional failures. The project she personally oversaw required nearly 2 years of her time embedded deep inside the regulatory body, meticulously drafting and finalizing the very federal rules and statutory interpretations Mark just tried to casually and maliciously break. Then she delivers the quiet, precise sentence that instantly stops the room, psychologically and corporately. I am that authority, Mark. And even more critically, the foundation I am representing today, the primary account you wish to call, is currently finalizing the comprehensive terms of their new massive $500 million endowment. That critical endowment is explicitly stipulated upon the demonstrated absolute ethical adherence and strict, non-discriminatory practices of its designated primary financial partners. The badge, her expert regulatory status, previously invisible to him, has flipped instantly, turning his attempted dismissal into a catastrophic liability. The casual, entrenched bias that was intended to cost her dignity suddenly became a terrifying $1 billion plus risk for Mark and the entire institution he represented. The bank lobby, figuratively holding its corporate breath, seems to visibly deflate. Mark goes utterly pale. He realizes instantly that by his egregious, arrogant dismissal, he had not simply insulted a highly qualified professional. He had placed the largest, most visible deal in his entire department's history, and fundamentally, the ethical reputation of the entire institution, into immediate severe jeopardy. He had, in essence, attacked the core integrity of the very compliance system she had architected to protect them. The single, most powerful sentence that definitively stopped the room was not a loud, emotional accusation. It was a precise, verifiable regulatory citation, instantly followed by the undeniable, unassailable leverage of her specialized competency and institutional knowledge. Big deal, infinitely bigger dignity, maximum leverage. Mark stammered out an immediate, transparently flimsy apology, but Lena calmly and firmly cut him off. I assure you, Mark, I am not interested in a personal apology. My professional interest rests entirely in genuine accountability and documented systemic repair. I require you to immediately call your chief ethics officer, providing a full description of this interaction. This meeting and the entirety of the community land acquisition contract is currently paused pending an urgent, high-level internal review of your conduct and the bank's continued commitment to demonstrable, non-discriminatory lending practices. What ensued next was swift, strategically cold, and entirely legally documented. Within a mere 24 hours, the chief ethics officer, who knew Lena intimately from the intense 2-year development of the Compliance Framework project, flew in on an executive jet. Mark was placed on immediate administrative leave, pending a comprehensive, full-scale investigation into demonstrated discriminatory practices and serious potential compliance breaches. Within exactly 1 week, his employment was irrevocably terminated. He was officially fired for cause, specifically citing the violation of the bank's newly implemented ethical hiring and professional conduct policy, the very policy Dr. Hayes had been instrumental in drafting. The bank subsequently issued a formal comprehensive written apology directly to the foundation and specifically to Dr. Hayes, immediately committing to mandatory anti-bias and compliance training for all commercial lending VPs across the entire institution. The contract was finalized and signed, not with the disgraced Mark, but with the CEO personally, under the exact ethical terms Lena had originally negotiated. The irrefutable proof that ends the systemic excuse was not merely Mark's indefensible behavior, but Dr. Hayes's preternatural ability to weaponize the bank's own complex internal rules and regulations against his entrenched malice. This is the demonstrable mechanism through which durable justice can be achieved. It begins with the essential realization that your institutional power is not proportional to your volume or emotional intensity. It is directly derived from your meticulous preparation and your unflinching professional precision. The best justice tool is silent, documented, utilizes specific policy numbers, and is deployed with maximum clarity. Now, we must focus on the preparation aspect. How do you strategically move your mindset from being caught off guard, experiencing panic and fear, to being fully, strategically ready to leverage your competence and demand immediate accountability? We require a simple, low-risk, and highly repeatable preparation ritual, a precise 10-minute mini-ritual you can implement and practice starting today. This essential ritual serves 2 key functions. It centers your emotional state and immediately prepares your strategic tools, providing a non-emotional, pre-vetted script to deploy the instant pressure hits. Commit to practicing this weekly. The 10-minute Justice Prep Sequence, a guide to strategic autonomy. 1. Center and utilize breath control. 3 minutes. Locate a quiet private space. Sit tall, maximizing your posture. Close your eyes firmly. Execute 5 slow, deliberate, deep diaphragmatic breaths. This is not passive meditation. This is active physiological grounding designed to lower your heart rate. The overriding goal is to immediately and forcefully separate your primary emotional reaction, instinctive anger, reflexive fear, from your capacity for high-level strategic decision-making, clarity, precision, calculation. Focus exclusively on maintaining powerful tall posture, consciously embodying the authority and expertise you intrinsically possess. Note: your speaking voice should be intentionally dropped slightly lower than its usual pitch. Low volume conveys focused confidence, never distress. 2. Policy reconnaissance and identification. 3 minutes. Identify the one specific area where you are most frequently targeted or challenged: workplace, air travel, high-end retail shopping, or banking transactions. Research and isolate the one single critical policy, law, or regulatory section that most powerfully applies to that scenario. For commercial air travel, know the specific FAA non-discrimination rules, e.g., 14 CFR Paragraph 91.17 on pilot authority limits. For high-stakes banking, know the core elements of the Fair Lending Acts and Regulations Z exemptions. For workplace issues, know the core elements of your company's D&I or anti-harassment policy, e.g., Section 4.b. Save the precise key policy numbers or regulation section code on your smartphone in a dedicated, easily accessible note. This number is your objective anchor. 3. Script development and phrase mastery. 3 minutes. Develop 3 neutral, assertively stated phrases that expertly shift the burden of proof and justification back onto the challenging authority figure without escalating emotional tension. Practice these phrases out loud in your preset, low, steady voice until they feel entirely natural. Phrase 1. The demand for oversight and documentation. I require the presence of your immediate supervisor, and I require a physical copy of the specific policy section you are citing as justification for this action right now. Phrase 2. The documentation trigger and consequence check. For accuracy and fiduciary protection, I need to record our conversation. Is that permissible under your documented company guidelines for client interaction? This forces an instant pause and requires them to acknowledge the creation of evidence. Phrase 3. The competence check and verification. Before proceeding, could you please clearly show me where this specific requirement is formally defined in Policy X Regulation Y? 4. Activate Witness Mode Protocol. 1 minute. Ensure your smartphone camera or high-quality audio recorder is preset for absolute rapid deployment, utilizing a quick access shortcut if available. Practice the smooth, seamless motion of turning the recording on and stating the date, time, location, and the names involved, even if you are only documenting internally for later legal review. This preparation ensures that when the moment arrives, you capture high-quality, legally admissible evidence, not simply a rushed, highly emotional account. The profound benefit derived from mastering this ritual is radical, preemptive autonomy. You are not passively waiting for predictable abuse to happen. You are maximally prepared to manage, counter, and document it the instant it begins. You proactively reduce panic, elevate clarity, and generate undeniable proof, resulting in authentic operational power. You meticulously practice accountability before the critical moment demands it. Remember this non-negotiable principle: always Without exception, respect your physical limits. Immediately avoid and de escalate any scenario that shifts toward potential physical confrontation. Your safety and well being are absolutely paramount. If you perceive genuine physical danger or immediate threat, prioritize seeking safety and external help above documentation or strategic confrontation. Recognize that laws and specific policies vary significantly by jurisdiction and locale. Adapt your scripts and protocols accordingly. But globally, the central principle remains ironclad: meticulous documentation and strategic escalation through proper, formalized channels constitutes your single strongest and most defensible shield. We possess the inherent capacity not merely to survive these inevitable encounters with prejudice, but to intentionally utilize them to force profound, genuine, and sustained systemic change. Dr. Hayes did not just successfully save her 500 men plus deal, she strategically forced an entire massive commercial lending department to fundamentally alter its discriminatory hiring and operational conduct protocols. That is the definition of sustained systemic justice. Your dignity is the highest currency, and your specialized competence is the absolute leverage. Never permit a temporary moment of a stranger's entrenched prejudice to cause you to forget the immense wealth of preparation, knowledge, and strategic power you inherently possess. Your specific challenge for today: allocate 10 dedicated minutes. Immediately complete the justice prep sequence. Identify one critical key policy or regulatory code you urgently need to know and save it in your phone. Learn one calm, assertive phrase ready for instant deployment, and identify one trusted ally in your professional network who would genuinely and actively act as a professional witness or support system if you needed to escalate a high stakes encounter. What specific policy or high stakes scenario are you focusing on in your critical prep today? And what profound high stakes situation do you want us to strategically cover next? Share your focus and feedback. We build strength, competence, and systemic accountability together, one documented moment at a time.